Wellington W5557 on Hatfield Moor at Lindholme. On the night of the 27th of September 1941, the crew of this 305 Squadron aircraft undertook an operational flight to bomb Cologne and took off from the base at Lindholme at 19:27 hours. All appears to have gone without incident outboard and over the target area. Fog was over Lindholme during the early hours of the 27th of September 1941, and while it was clear air above 500 feet, lower than that, fog was seriously affecting visibility. Added to that, other aircraft who were returning to Lindholme were short on fuel, so there was a possibility that Wellington W5557 may also have been low on fuel or even run out of fuel. Having flown back into the general area of Lindholme airfield, the crew lowered their undercarriage and were making an approach to land when it was thought that the pilot either misjudged the height of that the aircraft was flying at, or it had run out of fuel and the pilot was attempting a forced landing. The aircraft struck trees and then crashed on Hatfield Moor, just short of the airfield at 1:30 hours. Sadly, 3 members of the Polish crew were killed in the crash and a 4th died just over 24 hours later in hospital in Doncaster. I think it's worthwhile mentioning various things below after stating the facts surrounding the crash. A few Wellingtons crashed on land around Lindholme airfield during Second World War, with more than one undoubtedly crashing on Hatfield Moors next to the airfield. In recent years, one of the crash sites has a well-known constructed memorial placed at it, and it was in the Humber Heads Nature Reserve. The memorial is dedicated to the crew of Wellington W5557. As the International Bomber Command Centre have adopted this as being correct, that it now appears to be fact. It may well be correct, but using purely contemporary records, there is actually no proper evidence of this. All is stated is that it flew into trees and crashed on the moors. I would welcome contact from anyone who perhaps knows more. I might have to contact this gentleman who wrote this, who I do actually know, and tell him about R1073, because now we know for a fact that that crash site is R1073. A ghost nicknamed Lindholme Willie or Billy Lindholme or Pete the Pole has reputed to have been seen a number of times on Lindholme airfield and in the cells of the prison which now occupy the airfield site. He is believed to have been the ghost of one of the crew killed in the accident to W5557. In addition to this story, the body of a Polish airman was found in the Hatfield Moors area on the 23rd of July 1987 during peat cutting by a local farmer. 2 incorrect things there. The peat cutting was by Frisons, who had the contract to cut the peat out of the moor at the time, and it was never ascertained that this was actually a Polish gentleman. The origins of this gentleman still remain a mystery to this day, even though I think I might know who it is. So part of during peat cutting by the local farmer. Various stories exist as to whether or not he was identified or not, but he's buried at Newark. He's not, he's buried at Finningley, and the ghost stories have apparently ceased since then. No, they haven't. There's still a ghost out there. There are no unknown Polish graves in the large Polish plot in Newark Cemetery. Using the casualty file Air 81/9282 for the crew of Wellington W5557, this body certainly was 100% not from the crash of Wellington W5557. In that file is a list of injuries each airman sustained, and so an examination was carried out. None were listed as missing, and because that burial document in the file states those who died were all buried on the 30th of September 1941. So anybody found in 1987 cannot be from the crew of W5557. If it was found in the location where there is a Wellington wreckage, and there is also a memorial to Wellington W5557, is then certainly is not the crash of the Wellington W5557. Again, I would welcome contact from anyone who knows more. Again, I might have to contact this person. Air historian Eric Barton looked into this crash site in the late 1990s, and he credited the memorial crash site aircraft as being Wellington R1073. The same as me, I came up with that conclusion as well, which crashed on the 11th of June 1942. Wellington Z8586 is believed to have crashed near Route on the 15th of April 1942 and crashed into a mound, killing 2 of the crew. Z8586 may be at the memorial location though. This aircraft was initially assessed as Cat B, repairable damage, and later reassessed as Cat E, which would not exactly tally with the severely damaged wreckage site at the memorial location. Both are more than worthy suggestions in my belief. Now, I've not ever spoken about Z8586 online before, but I do know where that crash site was. That was actually on the airfield where the runway was, and that plane was actually codenamed Sonia, and I do have pictures of it. I might get on to do a vlog of that later on, but yes, that plane was known as Sonia. So in the crash, the 6 men that were the crew of this, we have pilot Sergeant Eugene Buzzcoe, PAF, age 27, buried Newark Cemetery, Nottinghamshire. Wireless operator Sergeant Jersey Swallowmere Leitch, PAF, age 23, buried Newark Cemetery, Nottinghamshire. Air gunner Sergeant Victor Wazelenko, aged just 18, buried Newark Cemetery, Nottinghamshire. And the gentleman that died the following day in hospital in Doncaster was second pilot Sergeant Thaddeus Korch, PAF, aged 27, died of injuries the day after at 2 o'clock in the morning. I have seen the telegram from the hospital to the RAF, which stated he died at 2 a.m. So it was literally 24 hours after the crash, and he's also buried at Newark Cemetery, Nottinghamshire. The navigator, pilot officer Stanislaw Barsdow, was injured, and so was air gunner Sergeant Zladislaw Pisarek, PAF. Zladislaw Pisarek is the only one from this plane that actually survived the entire war, went on to live in America, and had a very long and happy life. More than anything about the videos that I do, I want to honour the heroism of these men. What they did was inconceivable in this day and age when they went up in those bomber planes. The 2 men that survived the crash of W5557 both went on another mission on the 4th of May 1942. There was an awful lot of superstition in the Bomber Command. Because they'd flown before together on a plane that had crashed, they never flew together again. So this is Pisarek and Barsdow. On the night of the 4th of May 1942, both of their planes came down. Unfortunately, Stanislaw Barsdow, his plane was never heard of again. I believe it to be out there on the moors. I believe his missing Wellington is there somewhere. Pisarek's plane was shot down. All of the men were so lucky they were able to bail out, and every single one of them was rescued from the North Sea. And when they were rescued from the North Sea, not one of them had a single injury, which I think is absolutely miraculous.
Isn't this absolutely beautiful? Just look at the sky over there. It is absolutely gorgeous. Well, today it is Tuesday, and we're exactly 1 week and 1 day now until Christmas. So as of tomorrow, Christmas is in a week's time. I can't walk backwards just to show you the view. I'm going to have to do it this way. So Where did we leave off with the last plane video? Wellington R1073. So it turns out the memorial site, the Polish memorial site on the moors, is not the plane that they think it is, which leaves a big gaping hole. Where is Wellington W5557? I was absolutely blown away by the incredible information over at the National Archives with R1073. And I was able to go to a friend who's recently been down at the National Archives and asked them to be able to send me all the information and all of the flight details, or crash details, sorry, of W5557, which I'll get onto in a minute. More importantly than that, I've been in contact with a pilot who used to fly from RAF Lindholme in the more modern era, in the 70s, who was able to tell me where the planes went out of and where the planes came into. So in a second I will show a diagram of what the RAF base looks like. So on there I will put a circle, which will be the flight tower, and then I will show you the long runway, which is the runway out, and then I will show you the short runway, which is the runway where the planes land when they come home. As you can see from the diagram, the poor pilots, my goodness, they had a massive chunk of moors that they had to be able to cross on their return journey back to base. There were loads of ways that people used to light up the airfields back in the day. However, there were also known to be bandit planes around, the German bandit planes, which would actually take planes out as they were coming into land. So I think it was a bit of a decision call whether or not they illuminated the airstrip for the returning planes or not. What is a fact about RAF Lindholme is that the moors are exceptionally foggy. They were doing night raids mainly over Germany, which meant that they were returning in the small hours of the morning, and that usually meant that the moors were absolutely covered in low-lying fog, so visibility would have been really badly affected as they were coming into land, as you could probably see from the diagram. So let's look at two planes that we've already studied in this series of RAF Lindholme, which is the Lancaster bomber crash. And even though it didn't crash at the exact site where the parts are now, that is a deposit site, it wasn't too far away either from the moors. So we've got that, and we've got R1073. So that clearly gives us a line of flight over the moors in a straight line from the bottom of the runway. We also know that the line of flight from coming over from Germany, there was a little bit of a turn around the top end of the moors where there is a farm called Lindholme Lakes. So that's always been there, that's been there since the war. So they would use Lindholme Lakes to turn, to be able to come back around, to get in line, to be able to fly down. I'm going to show you another diagram now, and this is going to show you just how close another airfield was, and how during the war these two airfields were so heavily intertwined. Now this doesn't affect our story of W5557, but I've got some future plane crashes that I'm going to be talking about where this airfield plays a massive part in the history of RAF Lindholme. And so I just want to show you now where, in relation to RAF Lindholme and Hatfield Moors, RAF Sandtoft sits, because you probably will never get two airfields so close to each other. So why am I here? At the break of day, 1 week and 1 day before Christmas. Well, I did get all the information from the National Archives. It doesn't give an exact location of the crash of W5557. What it does give is a detailed description of the pilot It also gives a very accurate description of what happened in those fateful final moments of W5557. So they were coming back from a bombing raid over Cologne. It had been a successful bombing raid. By the time the crash investigators got to the plane, they had used all of their load. It appears that unfortunately, in this instance, the plane had run out of fuel. It had gone and done its mission and come back, and after it had hit the earth, unfortunately, there was no fuel spillage, which was usually a first indication with a crashed plane from back in the day. No fuel spillage whatsoever. Also on board, it was quite likely when these planes hit the floor that there would be extensive fire, and that didn't happen here either, and the tanks were found to be empty. So it looks like they've been in the direct line of flight where they should have been. Looks like the plane was positioned correctly, but then coming back towards the moor in the flight path of the bottom end of the runway, they've just been too low. The altitude has not taken them above the tree line. They've hit the trees, and then that has caused the crash. So, with that being said, we know that the plane landed within the boundaries of Hatfield Moor. We know it hit the trees on the boundary. There is tail on one document and only one document, so you don't know whether to believe it if it's only on one document. But that it was close to the village of Root. All of that information does match up, and so I'm off there now to see whether or not there is any sign at all of the crashed plane W5557. Now, this part of the moor has been extensively excavated for peat extraction, so I'm not really expecting to find much of anything at all, but it'd just be nice to walk in their footsteps and see where all of this happened, and I thought I'd bring you all along for the ride. So let's go see if we can find them. Not sure if you can see the geese flying over there on their way back to Alaska. Oh, there's one stray goose. Now, if you know the history of RAF Lindholme, you'll know that the Canadian Goose Squadron was actually formed here in 1941, which is definitely a topic I have to explore further. The Canadian Goose Squadron formed at RAF Lindholme. I mean, that is epic. Look how thick these copse of trees are behind me. I can't imagine a plane looking very well after it hit something like this. Now, this is at completely the opposite end of the moors from where the plane crash happened, and I haven't actually been to this part of the moors before, which is quite unusual for me. I seem to have been over every inch of the moors apart from this particular place. But I'm thinking, if the copse of trees looks anything like this, the plane's really not going to survive all that long, and it's not going to look well for having hit them, is it? Flippin' heck, really dense. One of my absolute favourite places on earth, and when people say to me, how on earth can you be missing a Wellington bomber? Well, the moors are full of these. They are absolutely everywhere. I think it's quite easy to be able to hide a Wellington bomber, especially as the peat itself only has a 3 to 4 feet solid peat crust, and underneath that it's liquid. So I think it's very easy actually to hide a Wellington bomber out here. In some cases they probably wouldn't have even heard the crash, and on a really windy day on the moors you probably wouldn't have even heard the plane or heard the crash. So I think it's very easy to lose a plane out here. I'm not sure exactly how much of this you will pick up. However, the red square over there on the what 3 words is an anomaly in white, which is directly in line with the runway. If you were to put a ruler over the return runway, it goes straight through that white bit there. I'm that blue dot there, heading towards that white bit. And as you can see, I've got quite a fair way to go. When it comes to Moors miles, that's about 2 miles in normal distance. And on Moors miles, that's going to be quite tiring. That's quite a long way. I just want to take this opportunity to say a massive thank you to everybody who watches our YouTube channel, Willem X Kid. Overnight we actually hit 1 million views. That is channel views, that is people that have watched our vlogs. We've been doing it for 7 years, but we've just been doing it for the majority of that time where it's just been fun. We've just been doing the odd things in the garden. William's now been doing it for half of his life, which is unbelievable. We were 7 when he started and he's 14 now. But it's never been for any other reason or any other purpose than as a living diary for us, so that we can look back on all of our fun and adventures and things like this, like the planes in RAF Lindholme, because it's something that we're interested in. So I just want to send out there to everybody who's watching a huge thank you. We really do appreciate it. It's lovely doing it for ourselves, but the fact other people are enjoying it as well is absolutely brilliant. So thank you. Look at that. There is a random Christmas tree in the middle of this self-set silver birch plantation. An actual Christmas tree. Oh, that's so symbolic, especially this time of year. How lovely. I wonder if that was planted there on purpose, or if that was one of the bird poo dropping trees that you can sometimes see. This is starting to get a little bit more sparse now, this spruce, which is, well, we're coming a bit closer. We're probably about a mile in from when I last filmed. And this isn't too thick, this bit at all. It's still very pretty though. Absolutely covered in ferns, bracken. Oh, what's this tree coming up here? An actual holly tree, I think. Look at that. So we've had a random Christmas tree in the middle of nowhere, and now there's a random holly tree. That's beautiful. How seasonal. Well, I never. Absolutely gorgeous. Nature never fails to surprise me. Chunk of old metalwork here. Now I don't know whether this is anything to do with the railway. It might be, looking at it, but I did know that the railway used to come down this way. Probably is a bit, isn't it? Gosh. Oh wow, I've just come over here thinking that this is well, something army, and it looked army, and I think it's a geocache box. I've got no idea how to get in. Let's have a look. How do I do this? How do I do this? Anybody know? Ooh, hang on. It looks like it should just lift off. Oh gosh, it's coming. It's gonna pop. It's gonna, oh, here we go. Wow, geocaching. Look at this. Somebody's left some vouchers. I've genuinely never seen one of these before. Harry W. Official elf report. Well, that's very seasonal as well, isn't it? Christmassy. Hand gel. Good idea. Hydrochloride tablets and a lighter. That's probably a very good idea out here, isn't it? And a little book. I wonder if you're supposed to leave your name. Oh, wow. Dating back to 2021. Oh, that is so cute. And I know totally not what we're out here for. But how lovely is that? I don't even know what day it is. 17/11/24. So, if we're 8 days before Christmas. Emma. read. I just want to get this right because I am old. Let me see what date it actually is so I don't get it wrong. I thought it was the 17th. Yes, 17th of December 24. Stay safe on the moors. Have a wonderful Christmas. There we go. Oh, they're so cute. Let's pop everything back exactly as we found it. Okay, this is nothing to do with planes right now. And I'm sorry that I'm boring you to tears with this. But how cool is this? So close to what is potentially a crash site. They've actually got geocaching in what looks to be an old army thing. Is this an army thing? It looks very army-y. Let me know in the comments below what this is. 100 cartridges, 12.7mm, one blur. Cartridges for weapons, insert project. Yes, I would definitely say army. Definitely say army. Sure, if you can see that. However, where the white thing is now, we are directly opposite that. And this high peak track here seems to take us straight to it. So, and if you look over there, that is the biggest copse of trees on the whole moor. That is a massive, massive tree line. And that I will turn exactly 180 degrees and you'll be able to see, or you might not be able to see because I'm a bit too far away, but over there are the hangars, directly over there. So that is a full 180 degree turn like that. So I am on the actual flight path now, coming in to land at RAF Lindholme. That's scary. How many terrified men were so pleased to get back here after their nightly raids. And again, I don't even know that this white anomaly is anything. It could be literally anything. It's just it's in the right place. The plane wouldn't have hit the trees and then crashed immediately. It was still under some sort of pressure when it came in, so it would have had to have travelled some distance away from the trees before crashing. And this just appears to be one of those locations in the moors where it is likely to have happened. But then it's also by these walkways here. Where I'm walking now is possibly 2 or 3 feet higher than the rest of the moors. So all this has been dug out, so you can bet your bottom dollar if a plane did land here, it's not here now. Right, how do I get around these trees? First rule of the moors is never go off track. However, I may have to go off track. Oh, it's one of those instances, isn't it, where they're just going to find my GoPro and there's going to be skeletal remains left. Never go off track. No, I won't, I promise. Well, there's a little bit of off tracking. There we go, back up onto the mound. So, oh, here we are. And this bit looks to be a bit of a dugout. Again, let me try and get around here. And this looks to be a little bit of a pond. I wonder how safe this land is to walk on. Oh. Do not do this at home, folks. This is not the brightest idea I've ever had, because I don't really know how deep anything is where I'm putting my feet. I'm just hoping that even with the liquid peat, there's enough stability because of the roots of this grass for me not to go in. And so this is the tip of the white thing that I've seen, which is a scar out of the landscape, which is again in direct line of that massive group of trees and the air hangers. I'm sure it's here naturally. Right, I'm being a bit of an idiot now. I'm going to go back to high ground. Having a look is one thing, but taking my life into my own hands when I'm a single mother of one, not a good idea. And I can tell by how wet my boots are that it was starting to get a little bit moist underfoot. So I'll go back to the high ground. Again, don't do this at home, people. So there we go. I'm sure if you're a little braver and it's not been as wet as what it's been, you could go and have a really good look at that area. But judging by the depth of the peat now, it has all been excavated, so I'm guessing if there was any plain left here, it would have been taken away. So my main point of interest now, if I can get past these bits of tree, ooh, little bits of something there, don't know what that is that copse of trees over there and how long that's been there. So I might have to go over there for a wander and talk about feelings, or how I feel when I come out onto the moor, especially when I'm here with William, because the moors can be such a place of reflection, and sometimes they can be really sad. Sometimes I can come out here and it's like all of the energy, I'd come out here all fit and excited and ready to go for a big walk like I did recently around Lindholme Hall, and I was halfway round and it's only 6 kilometres and I was absolutely exhausted. I felt like the earth was just pulling me down and I felt so weighed down and so bogged down. Whereas today, this morning, it was almost the polar opposite. It's a really dark December morning, and even though the sky was a beautiful blood red, I just didn't have the energy or the motivation, and it took a lot to get me out here actually. But now I'm here. I actually feel seriously Christmassy and really light, and almost a little bit like I want to skip down here. And I don't mean that with any disrespect to any of the men that might have fallen here, but today the energy is just so positive and light and joyful, almost youthful. Now, I suppose youthful does have a big say in all of this, because the poor men that died here were so young. I mean, really young. It was almost unheard of for the men to be over 30 in Bomber Command. So they were all really in their late teens and 20s. And as much as I can't feel spirit or anything like that today, you know, it's just purely a happy, youthful energy out here. And it just feels, for midwinter, quite alive. But again, no disrespect meant when I say that. It's just a lovely morning, a really, really lovely, joyful morning. I will make the most of it. Well, this is as far as I can go, unfortunately, because as you can see, I have run out of track and it's actually quite dangerous underfoot, so I am not risking an ankle out here on my own. Even though I've got my geolocator on, I don't fancy having to be heli-medied away from the flipping moors. That's just not nice. So I'm looking at the map. Where we've just been to is that red circle there. Where I am now is that blue circle, so it's that copse of trees over there, just at the very end, just that spur that the plane would have hit coming into land. And judging by the silver birch aspect, I think that the actual shrub will be very, very similar looking to this. Now, is this 80 years old? I don't know is the honest answer. It well could be. That silver birch there looks absolutely ancient, and I mean really old. It's even lost its silver. Silver birches don't grow very big or very wide. It's not like an oak tree that just keeps on going and going and going and going. They don't tend to do that very much. There's a lot of broken trees. It doesn't look like out here it's a very well maintained part of the moors. But again, it's dense enough that if a plane hit here, it really would do some serious damage on the way down. But because I am off track, I really don't want to go over on an ankle. It's not worth the video. As much as I like to make quality content, I don't think quality content involves breaking myself. So if I can get back to some form of point over there, again, I wish I could zoom in. Oh, the geese are coming over again. Hello, geese. Again, no wonder they did the Canadian Goose Squadron here. So, over there is the spur. Somewhere on that flight path would have been W5557, and we know that for a fact. We know that it was in the right location. We know that the pilot had hundreds of hours and many bombing missions. Pilot Buzzco was an absolute legend of a pilot at 305 Squadron. He was exceptionally experienced. So he would have come over there, crashing through the top of the trees, where it then sadly came to rest on the moors. Now, as we know through history, 4 of the men were killed. Only the pilot died on impact. I have got the mortuary reports from RAF Lindholme at the time. So Buzzco died on impact. He died instantly. There was also Leitch and Wazelenko, the young 18-year-old Victor Wazelenko. They unfortunately died after they'd been transferred off the moor back to RAF Lindholme, but they passed before they could be transferred onto Doncaster Hospital. Korchek died at 2 a.m. and I've got the telegram from Doncaster Hospital to the RAF explaining that Korchek had lost his life at 2 a.m. He was pronounced dead. And then the 2 survivors of the plane crash were Barsdow and also, and I can never remember his name, and it's really annoying because he lived in America. He survived the war. He was the only one that I've studied that has actually survived the war. But his name, it's almost impossible for my brain to remember. Let me go and have a look. It's Pisarek, Zladislaw Pisarek. Oh my goodness. Luckily, him and I have had this conversation before. Obviously, he's long since passed. He passed away in 1991. But I do look up to the sky very often and apologise because for some unknown reason, I can remember everybody else's names. It's probably because they died during the war. But Pisarek, it's just one of those names. It doesn't stick. I can't remember it. So sorry. But yeah, the other boys, Stanislaw Barsdow, Victor Wazelenko, Leitch, Korchek and Buzzco, unfortunately, well, the first one, Stanislaw Barsdow, died later on, but the other 4 unfortunately died as a result of this plane crash. And it's really sad, but at least we know now, not exactly where it was, but I can tell you exactly which line of flight it was on and in which area of the moors it was. So if you do come here looking, if you look at the map of the old RAF Lindholme, there is the long runway. If you take the long runway from the corner near the A614 up out onto the moors, that is the outward flight track. If you then look, and again I'll pop a diagram on, if you look where the flight control tower is, and then look at the short runway at the side of that, that is the return runway, and they used to land coming in that way. If you get a ruler and put your ruler on the short runway straight across the moors, W5557, it would have been right in the bottom corner, just beyond the trees, crashing as a result of actually hitting the trees. After the death of Korczak, his body was returned to RAF Lindholme, and he also spent overnight in the morgue here as well. And then 3 days after the accident, all 4 men were taken together down to Newark Cemetery, where they are laid to rest. If you want to see their beautiful resting place, I did record it for my vlog, Body in the Bog. I don't like to go there recording all of the time. I don't want to cause any disrespect to anybody. It's such a beautiful, quiet place to go and visit though, and they are on one of the front plinths of the Commonwealth War graves, and it is well worth a visit to pay your respects. It's an absolutely gorgeous cemetery. So there we have it, the story of W5557. I'm sure there's lots more to talk about and lots more to say, and lots more that will come up, but for now I think I better get myself off these moors. Okay, so shout at me at will. I know you are not allowed to do this, but I just found the cutest little holly bush, a little holly plant right at the side of the track, literally just at the side of the track. Look at that, it's got its roots on and everything. Now, I know that you are not allowed to take anything off the moors. I understand that, but I can't leave it, can I? It must have been pulled up by something. I saw some earthworks going on earlier, whether or not there's been anything down here. But if I leave it, surely it's going to die. So, and how on earth has a little holly bush got out here? I'm even now about a mile away. Oh, hang on a minute. I think I might see some more holly. I was going to say there's been ages since I've seen any holly, but then I've just come over here, and on this corner, look what there is. There's more holly, and it looks to have been chopped down. Somebody's actually chopping the holly down. Ah, look. No wonder this is at the side of the road then, side of the track. Somebody's obviously deposited of this and don't want it. Oh, I can't let it die. I'll take it home and plant it on and see if we can grow a holly tree. Oh, that made me feel quite sad. Who would discard such a beautiful little plant? So now I've got my holly plant. Need a name for it. Any names, any name suggestions, comment below. Anything Polish would be lovely, especially after we've just done about W5557. Which leads me back onto the subject of planes. Because I got all the information from the National Archives, one of the things that really struck me as a little bit cruel for the family members of the men who were sadly killed during the war is that these men on flight W5557 didn't get death certificates until 1947. That's over 2 years after the end of the war, before their family were able to tie up any of their financial loose ends. Now I know it was war, and I know that it was really quite a tricky thing to be able to get paperwork anywhere. There looks through the paperwork at the time that I was able to access. The Polish association set up something in Knightsbridge where they did all of the death certificates. So yeah, 1947, long time. So there we go, back in the car. What an awesome morning out on the moors. I don't even know what time it is now. 20 past 10, so we've been out for about 2 hours 20 minutes, which is absolutely lovely. I've done about 8 kilometres. It is sad that we're not going to find a crash site of W5557, but these peat moors were so extensively excavated for the peat that there isn't really much left out there at all. It's now a nature reserve for that very reason. I do like to think that where that scar is in the landscape, that's now a bit of a pond. It'd be lovely to think that that would be where the original crash site was, but I genuinely have no idea. You just have to think of a moving projectile hitting trees and travelling forward, whether in a straight line or not. The crash reports don't unfortunately say, but it was on track and it was coming into land. And I'll put the photographs up of the 6 young men who were on board that plane that night. Again, 4 died, 2 survived. They did, obviously, 1 died later on in the war and 1 survived the war and went on to live in America. They are now all dead now, so huge respect to those. I've been studying them now for over 6 years, and they were such great men, such brave heroes, that I think it's the least that we can do to keep their memory alive. Thank you so much for watching. I've got loads coming up over the next few weeks, whether or not that's hiking, mountain climbing, World War II. There's loads more plane crashes out there. Again, there's not much crash sites left, but there's loads of planes that crashed on the moors, so I've got loads to get through. I upload every single Thursday or sooner. I have started uploading on a Saturday night as well, if time permits. And hopefully I'll catch you next time. Take care. Bye-bye. So William, did you like that vlog today?
Yeah.
And what do you do now?